Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July 27th, 2018 edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. Today, we are going to have a topic that is very, I'm getting feedback from myself. Sorry about that. Let me adjust my volume. We're going to talk about YubiKeys and internet security and phishing and all of that type of stuff and ways for both you. I know there's a lot of accountants and bookkeepers that have joined today can understand how to better secure your firm, yourself, better secure your small business clients. And then for developers, how you can implement some of this technology and the security protocols in your own apps for your users. Very excited. So we have a guest. She, believe it or not, has ecosystem in her title. Alex works for YubiCo. She's the YubiCo ecosystem director of ecosystem. So it's very exciting to have somebody else has ecosystem in their business title along the way there. And then just a couple other house cleaning slides before we continue on. As a reminder, the app showdown is coming down to your last final days to get registered. I don't know why the web page is not up refreshing correctly, but I think we're down to 19 days left that you have to get your app registered and into the contest. So what we're doing is we're taking the 10 finalists to QuickBooks Connect in San Jose. The 10 finalists will pitch in front of a panel of judges. The winner takes home $100,000. But not just winning the $100,000 is the reason to be in this. You really want to be in the contest and try to become a finalist. We do 6 months of marketing. So we've taken the finalists to Startup Grind. We took them to Atlanta a couple weeks back. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback back through in my voice. Give me a second. And it's me. There we go. Perfect. Sorry about that. It's hard to continue talking when you keep hearing your voice come back through 3 seconds later. All right, much better. So we took them to Scaling New Heights in Atlanta, and but they've had 6 months of promotion. It's really helped those apps. I think I tweeted something the other day. One of the finalists, Kindful, and you can see where their kind of growth was flat. And then when the contest started and they entered the contest last August, you can see like they totally took off after that. So it's really important to use a developer, especially for all you new developers. This is the way for you to really start getting traction and fight with all the noise, because now there's over 550 apps on apps.com. There's thousands of apps that integrate. This is a good way for newer apps to get out there and get in front of everybody. And as I just talked about, QuickBooks Connect is coming up. So you want to mark this on your calendars. It's November 5th through the 7th. It turns into QuickBooks Connect week. We will be doing a hackathon that weekend before the Small Business Hackathon. The 5th and the 7th, we will also have developer sessions. So if you're coming to the event, you don't have to only go to the developer sessions. You can go to sessions for small businesses, sessions to accountants, but we do have developer specific content that is available at that session. For those of you who are not familiar with QuickBooks Connect, it's the celebration of QuickBooks to some extent. We will have almost 5,000 people there, maybe more. It's about almost 3,000 accountants and small business advisors and bookkeepers. And then you have entrepreneurs show up. You have the self-employed. We have maybe somewhere between 600, 800 developers when you count their marketing teams and the vendors that rent booths, et cetera. And so it's just a real big celebration of small business and developers. It's like a really great way for you to really connect with the entire ecosystem of everybody that's there. And then just one more final thing is you want to, this event and all events are always going to be on the developer site. It's developer.intuit.com/hub/events. This URL might be changing. Those of you who were in the Hangout last week, some changes are coming to the new developer site. So who knows how long this URL will still be available, but hopefully the events will still be on a page somewhere. And at that time, if I need to update the URL, I will. Without further ado, I'm going to escape out of the PowerPoint here and flip over. And hopefully everybody can see Alex's face now. Alex, if you want to say hi and just briefly introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. So as David said, my name is Alex, and I am responsible for ecosystem development at YubiCo. So it'll make a lot more sense unless you are familiar with YubiKeys in a little bit, but it's my job to help developers and other companies make support for the open standards that we support on our product so that we can proliferate secure online identities. So the more locks we have, the more you can use the key that we make.
And so we say it's a physical thing, right? It's not, it's a real physical key.
It is. So here's Here it is, actually. There's one of the different form factors that we make on my key ring here.
Got it. So I have tons of questions, right? Because I've kind of poked around your website and I've gone to Amazon and tried to even do some shopping. So before we kind of jump in, did you want to maybe just going to give an overview? I think you might have a deck or anything, and just kind of start with that, and then I know I have questions. Anybody who's watching, and any of you attending the webinar live right now, please use the Q&A panel. You can ask questions along the way. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll get those asked to Alex as well. So.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a couple of quick slides that don't want this to stay like super formal or corporate or anything, but just nothing worse than like a dry webinar with some PowerPoint slides, right? But so who is Yubico? So we are a small business as well, based out of Palo Alto, California. We were originally founded in Stockholm, in Sweden, and then the founders moved to the US several years back in order to work with really big internet companies like Google and Facebook and companies like Microsoft up in Seattle, because what we're trying to do is drive open standards that get used by technology companies, other product makers, in order to make secure access to things ubiquitous. So we are about 150 people in 8 countries now. We've had 6 years of profitability the last 6 years, and we're backed by top investors like NEA and Andreessen Horowitz. We have thousands of enterprise customers and millions of users globally. We actually have quite a big small business population as well as customers, because in order to achieve making secure access ubiquitous, we have to make it super, super easy. So there are some of the bigger companies listed down there below that we've worked with all over the globe. And really the reason that we're looking to make this easier for everybody is because the number one security problem that IT people face is stolen credentials. Some fun little facts. We actually don't like scaring people, but just some very basic facts. There are 3.3 billion stolen credentials reported in 2017 alone. And 81% of breaches actually start from a compromised username and password, or weak or stolen password. So in order to eliminate that, we were focusing on how do we improve getting access to things and the problem with passwords while also making it really, really easy, because ultimately, and a lot of your app developers on here know, if something's not easy to do, they're not going to use it, right?
Yeah, and I heard something this week, like 18% of all passwords are still like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or password. Like people still are not doing good passwords still.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would not be surprised if like the numbers were higher. There's a couple of different companies out there that keep track of the different popular passwords. And there's like a top 10 list that's usually published by companies like CNET and things like that, of just, even if you think you're being unique with your password, you probably aren't.
Got it.
And so, yeah, it's for a lot of the larger companies out there, the breaches are scary because of how expensive they are. I would think the same would be the same for the small businesses. If the average cost of a breach is $3.6 million, or $141 per record, that's not necessarily forgiving based on the size of the company that you are. It's a lot of money when something gets breached, and it affects not only things that you have to pay, but also the reputation to your business, right? Look at what happened to Equifax. They had many, many months of negative press over the breach that they faced.
And I think that with like GDPR and especially the developers that are operating in the European countries and the privacy, and if you do have a breach, just the headache and paperwork involved of communicating about the breach, any way you can prevent and avoid that internally is really important.
Yes, responsible disclosure, and actually the way in which you convey everything matters, right? It's not just the detail that you provide, but it's how you provide the detail. It's also when you provide the detail, how quickly did you respond to it? That was actually a big problem with Equifax, is that they waited months before they were sharing some really important details with everybody in terms of what happened and how bad it actually really was.
Got it.
So
stolen, but ultimately it's stolen credentials. It's just somebody else getting somebody else's credentials.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of companies that provide big online services are focused on this concept of two-factor authentication. So if you, even if the password is actually a shared secret, it's a secret that you have that you share with the company and it gets kept on a server somewhere. And responsible companies will hash that or encrypt that so that even if the actual data is stolen out of the server, it is supposedly not really readable. There are ways to crack all of that, but that's the shared secret. And so two-factor authentication is this idea that you have a password plus something else. And in 2FA, there are three-factor classes. There's something that you know, like your password. There's something that you have, and that could be a YubiKey. And then there's something that you are, like your biometric, so your thumbprint or your fingerprint on your iPhone or your Android phone, and then your facial math, or maybe a retina scan.
So for some of the people that maybe aren't familiar when you say two-factor authentication, so that's where I sign to a website, they send me a text, and they say type in this 6-digit number, that's two-factor authentication.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Cool, that makes sense. And then you were talking, and then the new one is basically three-factor. So do you do all three in the three-factor?
Well, so there are three-factor classes that I would just call, like, if there's a service that's forcing you to do three-factor classes, I would just call that like multi-frustration authentication, not really multi-factor authentication. The idea is that you want to combine two different factor classes. So you want to add something you have or the something you are to the password in order to strengthen that. And so like services like Google, you can go and add a security key by Yubico or a YubiKey, and in addition to your password. So when you go to log in, it'll ask you for your password. And then if you're logging in from a new device, like something that Google hasn't seen before, you haven't said, oh, I trust this laptop. Let's say you're at a friend's house or something, or at a client's office, and you're accessing something from their machine, then it'll prompt you to provide the key as well. So all you do is insert that, and then you touch this gold capacitive sensor. If you're on an iPhone, really typical is that you're logging in with your fingerprint as well. So you'd have a password plus your fingerprint as your form of two-factor authentication.
Cool. And I think before I let you move on to the next slide, somebody asked a good question I think is very applicable to this slide is, Blake asked, like, how secure is text message multi-factor? He said that he recently heard it's pretty easy for somebody to steal a phone number or to fake the SIM card.
Yes. Oh, that is such a good question. So someone must have preceded that one. No, SMS actually has been deprecated by, there's an organization called the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They go by NIST for short. And that's a non-regulatory agency in the US that specifies guidelines for digital identities. And they recently not only deprecated it, but restricted SMS usage because it is so easy for hackers to spoof and steal your phone number and reroute the SMS that they would otherwise send to your phone. Now, these are sophisticated in terms of like, you have to know what you're doing when you're trying to hack this. It's not going to be your neighbor across the street that's trying to like steal your Wi-Fi password or something would be able to do that. But it is relatively easy for the people who do these things. And it happens all the time when there's a targeted attack. They'll exercise the things that they know how to do really easily first.
I think I saw that was like there's a bunch of Instagram hacks that have been happening the last like 3 to 4 weeks. And a lot of it is people are stealing the SIM number or the SIM card. They're spoofing that, and that's how they're getting around the two-factor authentication. So it's interesting that I think in general, like the industry, the space, right, the last 16 to 18 months, everybody's been flipping to two-factor text-based authentication, and now we're finding out maybe that, but it's better than not having it, right? It's not perfect, but it's always one layer better, right?
Yeah, the idea is that you want to provide hurdles. Like each of those factor classes that I mentioned is something you know, is something you have, is something you are. They each have flaws on their own. That's just reality, which is why we try to combine them, because you try to make it harder and harder for somebody to get into something. And so the reason a lot of companies will go to an SMS first is because everyone has a smartphone. Smartphones are everywhere. So and when you run in a software business, it's so easy for you to just add something else to the thing they already have. But the reality is, and Apple has been touted for decades of being secure. The reality was, it wasn't that they couldn't be penetrated. It was just that there wasn't a big market for it yet. So now that everyone has SMS capabilities, that's where they're going to turn their attention.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. We are here to solve this problem of 2FA. We're trying to eliminate the man in the middle or the remote attacker from being able to get access to your accounts. And that's by adding the security key. So you'd have to actually physically steal the device itself in order to get access to the accounts. So even if you steal the password, it doesn't matter. And that's using the YubiKey with a specific open standard protocol called the FIDO Universal Second Factor, or U2F protocol. And that's something that we co-invented with Google in 2012, released it in 2014 to all of our end customers. And we've made support for that at the Chrome browser level, at the service level, and then you have the physical key as well that you combine with your service in order to protect your accounts against remote attackers who might happen to phish or steal your password. Maybe you went to g00gle.com, thought you were logging into your account, and instead you typed in your password. They might steal that password from you, but they can't get into your account unless they also physically steal that key.
Got it. So these keys are, maybe they're not going to stop your shady uncle that has access to your house, but it's going to really stop people on the other side of the world.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's the adversary. It's the competitor that has decided to go it through shady means to try and get into your business intelligence, or it's the North Korea, it's the Russia story for a lot of organizations. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect.
So the authentication challenge is all about making things secure, but also easy to use. And there's a lot of ways to do that. We talked about SMS here with the phone. Implementing passwords. So all of your developers out there, implementing a password on your application is super easy, but it has very poor security. And then there are these things up here in the left-hand corner that look like credit cards. And that's something called a smart card. It's really common in the banking industry and the governments. But those are expensive. They have extra hardware required because you have to have a physical reader that's next to the laptop or the desktop in order to plug that in. Maybe it's an NFC reader. And so those are very expensive. They have a lot of extra software you have to license. They have cards that you have to buy. And a lot of times the readers as well that you have to support. In the middle, that is sort of a one-time password token. Some of your users, if they have some sophisticated 401k stuff, they might get a little token from some of those that have a couple of numbers that change every 30 seconds or so. That's called a one-time password. That's very similar to a regular password in that it can be phished. So it's susceptible to a man-in-the-middle attack, which basically means if I go to log into my website and I think I'm logging into gmail.com, I put my username and password in, it'll have a next page come up where you have to type in the code before it runs out. You could be on a phishing site, which looks really, really similar to Gmail, but actually isn't. And in fact, there's actually somebody behind the scenes that's taking all the information, or they're scraping it from what you're typing in and putting it into the actual site so they can get access to the account. And then in the far upper right-hand corner is the YubiKey. So that's where we have made it super, super easy to do, but also really, really secure.
Okay. So how does this, and this is a question actually that came in from Blake again, but it's a question I actually had noted down ahead of time. I was wondering where the authenticator apps, like Google has an authenticator app, Microsoft has an authenticator app. I know at Intuit we use products like Duo, right? There's, and I think there's another product similar to Duo out there where they either give you a code, or instead of getting the text message to do the verification, you actually have to bring up an app and approve it inside some other app. Where does that fit on this drawing here? This image.
So exactly where the phone is. They are pretty easy to use, but again, they're still susceptible to phishing attacks because it's something that actually you're typing in. So instead of typing something in, you're just swiping, and it's communicating that back to the service. So it's very similar and still susceptible to those attacks.
Got it. So it's falling in that blue box there. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, but again, Duo actually supports using the YubiKey, and so you can actually protect your Duo account with a YubiKey, and you can pair those two together for a lot of the services that you want to log into. They're awesome, being able to federate and single sign-on into different accounts, which basically means you're using existing credentials from another service to log into a different service. And I know Intuit has OpenID Connect and OAuth support. So very, very similar there. and they're excellent. It's in terms of just ease of use. And we want you to have choices. You should be able to use choices. I don't want to scare you into thinking like you need to go out and use this YubiKey on everything. Because the reality is, you're going to be in situations where you're going to want to have different choices. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear about that. I'm not saying don't use those things. You have to understand what your threat model is and what your risks are. But we want to give choices to people. So it's not just forcing you to use a username and password. You have other things that you can use to protect your accounts in addition to that password.
Got it. And so it's kind of, I guess there's perspective of maybe a fantasy football league website. I'm not going to take the time to do an extra. I'm just going to use the standard password because it doesn't matter if it's hacked, but other, my banking, maybe I'm going to set up a more secure through YubiKey. So where does on this chart also is, obviously I have a laptop here, uses fingerprint scanner. My phone uses fingerprint. Apple's using the Face ID now. Where does that fall in on the chart?
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the different factor classes and the biometric piece, which is the something you are. So your fingerprint and your face. The biometric is called probabilistic, and when you're trying to gauge the likelihood that somebody is who they say they are, and that's for ease of use purposes. So sometimes if you've ever tried to log in with your fingerprint and your thumb was a little wet and it can't read it, right? They want you to dry that off, then you put it on there again. There's a threshold for, and it's called like an acceptance criteria. How sure am I that this fingerprint actually really is Alex's or David's fingerprint or face? And so the biometric thing, when you're entering your password, it's either you enter the password correctly or you didn't. It's not like, oh, it's one letter off, it's good enough, we'll let Alex into her account. You either put it in there correctly or you didn't. It's binary. Yes or no, true or false, 1 or 0, right? The biometric, there's like a spectrum of, yeah, we're pretty sure that this is Alex. Like there are different points on my facial math, and it's rough, it's close enough. Like they have to think of things of like lighting and other things that are in the screen, if I have my glasses on or not, if my hair is pulled back, can you see everything around my face or not? So with the biometric component to that, it makes it super, super easy, but that also adds a layer of complexity in terms of the threshold of how certain am I that this actually really is David that's trying to log in, or is it his son who looks really, really similar?
Got it. Perfect. That makes sense. I'll let you continue on. I think that this image is super simple, but it really paints a picture of where everything falls in.
Thanks. Yeah. So when we talked about the YubiKeys, I showed you the blue one through the camera here, but we have some other form factors as well. And the blue key, which we call that the FIDO security key by YubiCo. It's got a little 2 on it here because it's a second generation of this. The previous one was called the FIDO U2F security key. I won't get into the details because it's a rabbit hole, but we essentially have this next generation of this key because most recently Microsoft announced that they are also making support for FIDO strong authentication, and there were some additional components that we added to the open standard. Your developers can take advantage of those. If they go to developers.yubico.com, they can learn more about how to make support for that, and that is the phishing resistant open standard that you want to focus on. This key does that, those protocols only. That's all that it does. So you would need to use that for any services that support the FIDO protocols. In addition to that, though, we have a couple of other form factors. This one here is called the YubiKey Neo. You'll notice it has sort of like a Wi-Fi looking symbol on it, and that's because you can not only plug it into your USB-A port, but you can also use it over NFC with like your Android phone and your iPhone. And so I want to make sure I cover that part about the iPhone and NFC. Apple opened up NFC capabilities for things other than Apple Pay last year. They opened it up in one direction. So the YubiKey can write to the iPhone, but the iPhone can't talk back to the key. And that's really important because that's what's required for the FIDO protocol. It's called a challenge response protocol. And I'm trying to balance explaining this on the technical side, but enough for also some of the accountants that are on that maybe don't get into the weeds on some of this technical stuff. But essentially, that makes the key, speaking over OTP to the iPhone, sorry, that makes the YubiKey Neo speaking to the iPhone over NFC one directional. So what is the difference between the blue key and the black keys on the right-hand side? And that's the protocols that they support. I talked about open standards. So in addition to the FIDO open standards that we support, we also support OTP or one-time passwords. And that's similar to those little tokens that we mentioned before with the digits that run out, or like your Authenticator app. You have to pull out your phone, open that up, open the app, and then wait for the code to start up again so that you can go quickly type that in before it runs out. The keys do those as well, but instead of having to type in the code, all you do is insert the key and touch it, and it injects it for you. So it acts like a keyboard, basically. And so the Neo does that over NFC. This next one with the Y on it is the YubiKey 4. And that's the beginning of our 4th generation keys. So similar to the YubiKey Neo, it supports the FIDO protocol and OTP. All of these multi-protocol keys also support smart card capabilities. And the point of all of this, of why multiple protocols, is for legacy proofing. So you might be using newer tools like Google or Dropbox that support FIDO. You may also be using other tools like LastPass, which support one-time passwords. You may also want to protect the login for your local machine, and you could use that for smart cards. So going back to being ubiquitous, you've got one key for everything that you log into. And then we have some other form factors. This next one is the YubiKey 4 Nano. That's designed for additional convenience. It's really, really tiny. Like, just to put that in perspective, this is how tiny it is. It is meant to stay in your laptop. So you don't pull that one out. It stays in your laptop, and all you do is reach up and touch that little gold contact. The one to the right is the YubiKey 4C, and both of these have USB-C connectors. So if you're on a newer MacBook, we make a form factor that plugs neatly into your USB-C port, so you're not having to carry around a dongle with you. And so the Nano versions stay in your port. The others are meant to go on your key ring, just like this one here, so it goes everywhere you do.
Okay. That makes sense. And then so the Nano ones, I guess, like, some part of me feels like, oh, well, if it's in my laptop gets stolen. Now they got my key, my YubiKey also, but I guess at some level, if they steal my laptop, they got all my browsers in Firefox and all my passwords anyways. Like, they have the machine at that point.
So if you lose your laptop, you do lose your YubiKey. The YubiKey does not store any personally identifiable information. So it'd have to be a super targeted attack where they know, I'm stealing David's laptop. I know he's got his YubiKey in there, and I have all his passwords already. So now they've got like the holy grail, right? Like, we're not I call that the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible scene. We're not solving for like physical possession of your actual machine. We're solving for the remote attacker. So yes, if you are concerned about physical possession of your device, that's where we come in and say, we really recommend that you use this on your keychain so the two are separated. But it's really about convenience. If you're logging into something hundreds of times a day, any of the developers on the Hangout right now that use GitHub, you're having to log in every time that you want to recommit code. It's meant to be really convenient for that. And also, if you are like a lot of the other developers at our offices, at the Google offices, or Facebook offices even, you're walking around with your laptop. You don't want to walk around with this thing sticking out of it, because it is super, super durable. Like, I'm actively trying to break this thing and I can't. It is very, very secure, very, very strong. So if you drop your laptop and this thing's sticking out of it, you're going to break your port, and the key will survive. It's really easy to replace a lost key, and it's very inexpensive to replace a lost key. It's very expensive to replace a port on a machine. So if you are going to leave your key in there, that's why we make these little nanos. And here's just for some comparison.
Oh, wow. Teeny.
Yeah, very, very tiny. This is actually a huge engineering feat to be able to fit all of that security in this little teeny tiny thing. This is actually just the connector. So everything that is in here is also in this one. And it's the world's smallest crypto box. Also, actually, I forgot to mention, this also stores your GPG key. So if you are encrypting any files or anything like that, you can actually store that on here as well.
So it's kind of like, I think my next question is like, can I use this to, obviously for logging to websites, I get it, it makes sense. Can I use this for like local, like if I want to protect a PDF or an Excel doc, or what about my entire PC? Like, is it the same use cases?
So you can actually protect your device login with the YubiKey, and we have some instructions on how to get that set up. So whether it's a Linux or a Mac or a Windows machine, Windows 7 and above, you can actually use the YubiKey to protect the device at the login level for sure. And then we do support SSH and GPG for actually doing encryption. There's some nuances there with like local Excel or PDF files that we can take you to our knowledge base on how to do those specifically. But with like Office 365, for example, you can actually use the YubiKey to protect Office 365 access. So if someone wanted to log into Office 365 cloud from, some other location, you can protect those as well.
Got it. Just a reminder to anybody that came in a little bit late, use the discussion panel for any just general discussions, and you can use the Q&A panel if you have any questions related to today's topic or guest. And those of you that are watching on Facebook Live, I know I saw a couple of you pop in. If you have any questions, feel free to stick them in the comments, and I will also get to those as well. Thank you.
Awesome. So just to like recap what I was mentioning before, with the YubiKey, we've made this much easier to use. We're providing really strong security. It's all about ubiquity and having one key to all systems that you're logging into. And then the quality that I mentioned. So the durability, it's waterproof. I'm not walking around just snapping this thing in half, right? And then in terms of cost, they're very affordable. So they range in price from $20 to $60 per unit.
Got it.
And it's a one-time cost. Like there's no subscription that you have to pay for or anything like that. You buy the product, you own it. It's yours.
Okay. That's a different business model than everybody else these days, right? Everything's SaaS.
Absolutely.
So if I don't know if you still have some more slides, but I know I have some more questions. I think some other questions might be jumping in. Did you have
I mean, this was like a standard deck that I pulled out in terms of like how to use it.
This is actually good. Yeah, I was going to ask, how do I even use this? So.
Yeah, so this is an example with Google. So the point is that you're going to register this key with every service you want to protect. We get a lot of questions like, so I just plug this into my computer and now everything's protected. It's not quite that simple. You do have to go and register the key with the services you want to protect. So go and register this with Google. And then the next time you go to log in, it'll prompt you for your password. You put that in successfully. You insert your YubiKey and touch it. The little gold contact here will light up. And this is not a biometric reader. It's a touch capacitive sensor, which is actually a really important feature. And that's in the event that your machine ever has some malware on it. If someone's trying to, remote attack you, it would have to physically grow arms and fingers with skin in order to trigger the cryptographic secret on this key, which is why we have you insert it and touch it with your finger to trigger the cryptographic secret. And then there's a photo here of how you would do that on a mobile phone. It's just you tap it on the back of the phone wherever your NFC reader is. I think some of the pixels, it's somewhere in the back middle of the phone. And then on the iPhone, it's like up near the camera part.
Okay. So when you say you have to register this with a site first, like I go to some preferences page on Google for my passwords and there's like register a hardware device or hardware security key. Like, is that kind of how that's done or?
Yes, absolutely. So you don't register anything with us. We don't capture any of your secrets. In fact, the product doesn't even have any telemetry on it. It doesn't phone home to Yubico and say, David's using the YubiKey 4C Nano and he last logged into this service on this machine in this location. We don't get any information like that. It's your product. All of your secrets are yours. So what we have done though is because there are so many services out there, it's kind of hard to know which one can you use it with. We have a link on our website. If you just go to yubico.com/start, you pick the key that you have, and then we present you with all the logos for the different services that it works with, and you click on that, and it takes you to their instructions page on how to register the key with them. So you'll register that key with Google, and the reason that there are no shared secrets is because of we're using public key crypto. So there's a public key, private key pairing that gets generated on the key at the time of registering the key with that service. The public key is provided to Google, in this case, as the example. The public and private key stay stored safely on the YubiKey. And the next time you go to log in, there's a challenge response that happens where Google will present the public key to the YubiKey along with the origin ID, which is provided by the browser. And that's something that cannot be spoofed. And so if the key sees that public key with that correct origin ID, then it signs the challenge. It responds back with the private key signature to the service, and then you're able to successfully log in. So if you were to go to a phishing site and it said you put your password in and it asks for the YubiKey, it might have the correct public key if they've stolen that, but it won't have the correct origin ID. So the key won't recognize it and it doesn't do anything. And so every time you register this with a different account or a different service with a different account, a new public key, private key pairing is generated and stored on this key, and it holds nearly unlimited. It's actually unlimited, but we have not been able to get to a maximum. I think it was like 100 to the N. Our CTO and co-founder Jacob Ahrensvard, I asked him, I was like, just give me a number. Like, is it 60 billion? Like, how many? And he's like, literally, there is no maximum number. Okay. So this one key can be used for everything.
Got it. Makes sense. So go ahead. I think that's fine.
Yeah. So that's really it. We've got it on how to stop phishing. It comes down to the strong crypto. It's bounding the keys to the origin, the user presence. There's native support in the different browsers that we're working towards. It's already on Chrome, Firefox, and Edge is coming very soon as well. It also works on Opera, if for any of you using Opera out there. And then we always recommend having a backup. So I'm surprised no one has asked yet, what happens if I lose the key? So I mentioned there's no personally identifiable information stored on the key. But if you do lose it, we do recommend that you keep a backup at home in a safe place. So like mine's kept in a safe that's bolted to the ground. It's where I keep my marriage certificate, social security cards, and passports. So if I happen to be on vacation or something and I lose my keys at the beach, I'm not totally hosed. I can still get into my accounts when I get home. I just grab that backup key.
So if I'm going to go shopping for a YubiKey, I'm going to buy two?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay.
And then they're internally like the same ID or something. So that way, if I lose one, I just start using the new one, and or I have to reset up the new one over and over again.
Yeah, so there are no shared secrets between these keys. There's no way to like have them sync, and that's for security reasons. But okay, what you will do is you'll buy the two keys when you come to the site, buy them at the same time, and then you set them up at the same time. So if, as you're going about your life and you're creating new accounts, I always try to make a note that, I want to go make sure that I've added a backup, added my backup to this account when I get home. Or you just set up all of your accounts at one time with both keys. You put one on your key ring and then the other one you put in your safe.
Okay, got it. So every time you set up that first site, just set up both keys, set up both keys every time.
Yep.
Got it. And then so if I do lose a key, does it get disabled somehow? Like if somebody finds it, couldn't they try to use it on their computer to sign into my Gmail account?
They'd have to know that it was your key first and foremost.
Okay.
Actually, if you lost it and you found one on the ground, you could pick it up and just start using it yourself. Like, we're that confident in terms of like, there would be no shared secrets between any of it. So you could just start using this YubiKey that you found on the ground. But if you do lose it and you wanted to revoke the key, if these are your personal accounts, right, you have access. There's no IT admin that's like protecting all of this stuff from employees doing whatever they want with it. You can go and revoke the key, sure. Google allows you to do that. Google allows you to add actually, I don't know how many. They don't really have a maximum. I think we have a demo account with like 85 keys added to it. It's crazy. And that's so that all the different people using that demo account, they've got their own key they can use with them.
So I think I got this. So just like on Facebook, I can go to all the apps that connect to my Facebook account, and I can say disconnect, remove this app. I can basically go in and say remove this key, so no longer can touch my Google account. Got it. That makes
and then for those on like using Google G Suite at work, IT admins can go and revoke, but also they can choose whether or not the employees can add and revoke keys themselves. And IT admins can also decide, you know what, I really do want you using YubiKeys. You have to use a YubiKey with your account. So yeah, that's the whole point of using public key crypto and making this easy to scale, is that you need to be able to manage these things yourself. You shouldn't have to rely on some centralized IT help desk to call in and say, I lost my key, give me a new one, or I lost my key, revoke it.
Yeah. So IT help desk and kind of it's a good transition question for that just came in from Byron. Byron wants to know if this can be used for Active Directory authentication.
Oh my gosh, yes. So many of our customers use it for Active Directory. So whether it's on-prem or cloud-based, yes, you can use it with OTP or smart card capability. And there's also some things you can do with SAML as well.
Got it. So, all right, so I'm sold. How would I get one, right?
Yeah. So you can go to our website. You can go to Amazon. Actually, we had a bestseller day yesterday. 4 of our products on Amazon were all marked bestsellers. We've had a really good week. And then you can go to yubico.com/store and buy them there. They're super affordable. And we don't quite promise the overnight delivery the way that an Amazon does, but you get them relatively quickly in a few days, depending on where you're located. If you're in the US, you'll get it within a few days. And then, you can go and get them on Amazon as well.
Got it. So what about if I have I think I kind of understand now that I understand how it works better. So if I wanted to get this, because I have a team at my office, right, or I want to get it and I want to have one for my wife, and I want each kid to have one for all their logins, right, because if anybody's going to get phished, it's going to be my kids. At this point in the game, right? They're going to go to some website they shouldn't go to, and it's going to backfire from there. So, and I guess I had this question beforehand, but I think it's kind of answered now. Is there's no real. They're all individual devices. There's not I have a suite of YubiKeys and they're all on a network together, talk to each other. They're related. They're cousin YubiKeys. They're just all a separate thing.
Exactly.
Figured each time separately for each person.
Yes. So, and actually so my personal accounts, I actually have a key at home that I use on my personal accounts that my husband has a redundant key. So because I trust my husband, if I didn't, this would be a very different conversation, but we have redundant keys. So I gave the example of going on vacation. If I lost my keys on the beach that day, but I wanted to get into my Gmail account, he'd still have access from his key. And then it's the key plus the password. So you've got your 2-factor authentication there protecting the account. But you're right. They don't talk to one another. You could, as a team, if you wanted to go centrally buy them, one person designated at the office to go and buy them, you can go buy them on the website. You can talk to some of our sales reps if you wanted to do some higher volumes and distribute those. And then they go and register themselves rather than one IT guy sitting in the office registering every key. He's not going to sit there and do 2 keys for Alex and David and John and Samantha and Byron and Blake and all of these other people. He just buys them. And if you go to the Facebook office or the Google office, they just have fish bowls of these things sitting around at the IT office. So you just go grab one, take it back and register it with your account. And now you've got another YubiKey.
Got it. So it's there's some responsibility on the employees to take the time to set it up and configure it with each website, ultimately.
Yes. Yep.
So having them free in a fishbowl is the best thing the IT department can do, right? Without physically making people configure them.
I mean, that's true for the FIDO scenario. If you're doing OTP, right? If you're storing a certificate on the key to do OTP or smart card, then that can actually be managed centrally by IT. There are also organizations that will register FIDO credentials on behalf of their employees as well. It's really about what does your IT manager want to do, right? I mean, small businesses everyone's wearing multiple hats. So chances are the person that's running IT at this business has a couple other jobs and he or she may not want to go and register all of these keys for everyone. But if you're using OTP or smart card, then you can absolutely manage that for them and then physically take the 2 keys to Blake and say, all right, Blake, here's your YubiKey Nano and your YubiKey Neo. These are for you. Go use them.
Yeah. So one case we see a lot with accountants and bookkeepers is that they have small business clients, but the accountant and bookkeeper a lot of times has to sign into their bank site and sign into sites on their behalf to some extent. And not every single app manages that correctly where they, hey, invite your accountant, or invite a second user to your account. And so, this is going on for a long time, where a small business owner will give the accountant the username and password, and the accountant actually has that physically written down or stored in a QuickBase, or they store it somewhere, the username and password for their clients, right? Multiple of them. So in theory, with this model, right, I get 2 keys. I set up the 4 or 5 websites on the key at the same time, both keys. So the small business owner keeps the one. I'm the accountant or bookkeeper. I take the other one back to my office. I write down what business that's for. So I all of a sudden I have a lot of keys, but I no longer have that risk of me saving people's passwords in my office.
Absolutely. So I would really encourage, there's actually a ton of password managers out there that are cloud-based or local-based that actually support the YubiKey as well. So you could absolutely pair the YubiKey with the password manager and protect those different credentials for your different clients.
Yeah, so maybe you don't need 60 separate YubiKeys. You could use somebody where LastPass has that kind of parent-child client relationship, and you have a YubiKey protecting the LastPass. They have the YubiKey protecting their access to LastPass, and then it can be just done that way. Okay, you don't have to buy it.
Absolutely.
I tried to sell a lot of extra keys for you just now. Like this use
Appreciate
every
it.
client gets they have to have a separate YubiKey for every single client. I tried to really help you out there.
I mean, you could certainly do that if you wanted to, but the whole idea behind the FIDO protocol is to make it so you've got one key to rule them all. And there may be scenarios where someone's using OTP in their environment with a specific certificate. It's not using and that's exactly how it would happen, right? A different business is going to have their own validation server with their own certificate. So one client may issue you a YubiKey, and another client may issue you another one. And that's really their prerogative. It really depends on the protocol. And that's the idea also behind the multiple protocols, is that you've got that one key with multiple protocols that can do multiple things. And, as a business, you, excuse me, you may decide that I want to issue YubiKeys to my contractors and my vendors because I want to do the right thing by my own business and protect all of this, business intelligence. So in order to get access to the files that you need in order to provide the services you provide me, you have to use this YubiKey. So there, you could end up in a scenario if you're like a contractor or some sort of vendor that, a lot of consultants may have a different YubiKey for each of those accounts. And it could happen for sure.
So that is a possible use case. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like big, huge keychains with a bunch of. Cool. So this is the Intuit Developer Hangout. So I want to I know we've kind of covered a lot of YubiKeys 101, but I do want to talk a little bit about, what in regards to developers and their own sites and what they have to do. So I know some of you that are on, if you are a bookkeeper and accountant, you don't want to listen to this part, feel free to tune out, but there could be some other interesting things there. So I think, this is simple, right? So every accountant, bookkeeper in the universe buys these. They're using them on all their accounts. Can they use them on every single app that they want to use it with, or do each developer do they have to do something special to support the YubiKey inside their app one at a time?
So I'm gonna make sure I understand your question. Okay. So you're asking, as a developer, is there something special I need to do in order to have a YubiKey work with my product?
Yeah, I think sorry, I'm confused with a hypothetical. So in the future, when every single accountant bookkeeper's using YubiKeys, would a developer need to, how do they have to do something on their end to support all these?
Yes, so they do. So that is the reasoning behind the open standards component of this. So developers.yubico.com, we have free open source and free resources to go and make support for FIDO or OTP or make support for smart card capabilities within your own app. And the idea behind using an open standard versus doing something proprietary to you is that you want this to work on every operating system and every browser and every type of device, right? You want to not only be able to use this on a smartphone, but you also want to be able to use it on your Mac and your Windows machines. You'll also open yourself up to more customers if you make sure that you're using open standards so that all of this stuff works across all the different platforms and different browsers. So you do have to go and make support for it. If you've done if you've added a password to your account before, then it's that there's a portion of code that you're going to add There are going to be some libraries that you're going to reference or APIs that you're going to use. So it's very similar to that. For a frame of reference, like how long should this take? LastPass actually used our SDK that we recently released for iOS on NFC using the one-time password OTP capability on the YubiKey. Apple opened this up last summer. They were spending months and months and months working on this, trying to get this to work over NFC. We gave them an SDK, and within 2 hours, they had it up and running. So that makes it super quick and easy of just like copying that code and pasting it in, and then it points to the correct servers for validation.
So it's beyond just, hey, we have an API, you can build to this. Like you have SDKs to help people build faster.
Yep, absolutely, and not just for iOS, for Android as well. So I don't want to say that this is like something you're going to do in a couple of hours. LastPass already supported the YubiKey, so there were a lot of things they had already done. But this is something that most organizations, when we hear from them and say, hey, we work with YubiKey now, can we start marketing together? It's something that they usually did within a matter of a sprint, maybe a couple of sprints. So like once you're done with all of the business case stuff and all the user stories that you have to go through and the user flows that your different product managers want to control, once all that stuff is done, like this is super quick and easy for the developers to actually implement. It can be done in a sprint.
Got it. And so then if a developer wants to implement this, are there fees? Like obviously if I sell my app in the App Store, I pay some sort of commission, a fee. Like, is there a fee to develop on the platform?
There is not. These are all free open source materials. You can just go and use them. We do have a mailing list that you can sign up for if you want to, stay in the know about all the different things that we're releasing and updates to the different tools that we provide. But otherwise, nothing's gated. You can go in and get access to all these materials today.
Got it. And what about is there any jurisdictions or government agencies? Is there any requirements that this has to be used? I mean, obviously the AICPA is not requiring this, that all accountants do this yet or anything like that. But I have started to see where I think Deloitte, right? Deloitte was hacked, and then Deloitte now requires all third-party app developers to use two-factor, mm-hmm. right? So is there any other standards you're seeing trickle down from the top on switching to a hardware-based YubiKey type system?
So I mentioned NIST earlier, and they do have a special paper. It's NIST SP 800-63, and that's their digital identity guidelines. These aren't requirements necessarily. It's no one mandating it, but they do provide these great guidelines. In addition to that, there's something called FIPS. So this is for government agency related things or regulated industries that deal with government agencies and contractors. They will have some guidelines around what exactly you have to do, what you can purchase that does two-factor authentication. So you can get on the GSA and FedRAMP and sell your service, and it can be protected by the YubiKey, and that will open you up to some new business. But in terms of actual jurisdictions or government agencies that are requiring the use of the YubiKey, these are all kind of starting to happen. And it's really about the security key component to that. So having a physical hard token in addition to your password that you're using.
And then I have another kind of question on this. So how likely is this technology to change? So I guess this is a question, I think, from a developer perspective. Am I going to be constantly changing and updating my code because of this changes to these standards? And then me as a consumer, if I buy a key, is this now I'm on the every 18-month upgrade cycle? I got to buy a new key and reconfigure the new key on all these websites. How often? I mean, obviously you can't predict the future, but how rapidly changing is this kind of technology now?
So that is such a good question. And we don't want to promise absolute security and that something will never change. Absolutely. For a bit of context, so the FIDO U2F protocol that we released and we worked on, launched in 2012 with Google, that hit markets for consumers in 2014. We haven't changed that since. What we have done is release a new set of standards that enables you to do passwordless, and that was with Microsoft, and that's the FIDO 2 component of that. So we're talking about going from 2012 to 2018. And so the spec was finalized for FIDO 2 just this past spring, and so I think in terms of every 18 months, no. You can actually continue to use FIDO U2F. That will continue to exist. This is a service level question that you'd have to go and ask these services, like, are you planning to take away U2F or upgrade? Even if they upgrade, they're backwards compatible. So the FIDO 2 stuff will still work with FIDO U2F. OTP has existed for many years. Smart card has been around for 30 years. So like these things are like legacy, right? That's why the key supports them. So in terms of like, if you were to go and buy a key today, would it like be outdated and you wouldn't be able to use it in 18 months? No, that wouldn't be the case at all. You can continue to use those. There is a lot of innovation happening right now around two-factor authentication and all of the mobile apps and things that do the same stuff. Like the technology that's underlying all of these protocols are staying the same. So if you go and you make support for this as a developer this week, it's not like in 2 years from now, suddenly you're going to be, in the dust.
Okay, got it. So in theory, if I buy YubiKey, it's going to probably outlast my laptop and I'll probably outlast my phone. I'll be replacing those things before I replace the actual keys.
So yeah, actually, I had just actually replaced my phone for work 2 weeks ago, and I have Google Authenticator on there for a couple of products that don't support YubiKey yet, but that I use. And that was a real pain trying to migrate my Authenticator app over to my smartphone. And so that's why we call the YubiKey the root of trust. So this will absolutely outlive your laptop. Like the laptop refresh cycle, I used to work at Intel. The laptop refresh cycle is 5 to 7 years, which is a little longer than they want it to be. And then your smartphone, like you either break it, so you're replacing it, whenever that happens, or you're doing it every year or 2 years, depending on how much of an early adopter you are. So yeah, you could potentially like buy several new smartphones and still use the same YubiKey. We go to trade shows a lot, and we'll have people walk up to the booth and go, I love my YubiKey, and they pull it out and they're like, I've had this thing since 2008, or I've had this thing since 2010. And meanwhile, they're like on the latest phone and they've had like 5 phones since.
Got it. So maybe I had wanted to confirm a question here. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. Just to confirm, if a service is configured to use the YubiKey, the only way to access that service from a phone is if you own the YubiKey with the NFC.
Really good question. So on Android, you can use it on NFC. We also make the USB-C form factor that you can plug in and use.
So if I have USB-C on my Android device, I could use that instead of the NFC.
Yeah, exactly. So like you could have this on your keychain and your phone separate and plug that in. I have an iPhone, so this won't actually plug into that one, but yeah, you can also plug that one in.
Got it. And so if you go back to that chart of all the keys, so which is the one, so if somebody doesn't care about, hey, I don't need it on any of my mobile devices or my phone, so which key am I going to want to get?
That will depend on a number of things. So like there's no hard and fast answer for this. However, we do have a really awesome product finder quiz on our website. So if you go to yubico.com just go to yubico.com, hover over the start button, and then there's a item that you can click on that says like find the right key for me. Okay. And I think it's like 4 or 5, maybe 6 questions that you go through. And then after you've answered those, it'll spit out which key's right for you. Got it.
And then I guess the clarification, the confusing part is like for Android has NFC that goes both ways. So you get the key that does NFC if you want to connect to your Android device. But if I have an iPhone, I can't use the NFC one. So is there a different key I should be looking at?
So you can use NFC on iPhone if you're using OTP. And an example of an app would be LastPass, right? So if you want to log into LastPass with your YubiKey, it's actually really easy to do. Then you can use that. Otherwise with iPhone, so again, we're not talking about like eliminating all the other forms of 2FA out there. So let's say you have an iPhone and you want to get into your Google account, then you can use one of your backup codes. You can go through Google Authenticator, you can do an SMS, you bless that phone. And I mean, when's the last time you had to log into something native on your iPhone, right? Sort of something you do once and then it becomes a trusted device. Okay. So you do that and then you can go and turn those other things off. And then that way, if someone, a remote attacker is trying to get into your accounts, they'll have your password that they've phished from you, but they won't have your physical key. So they'll get blocked at that point and won't be able to get into your account.
Okay. Got it. No, that makes sense. If anybody, I think we're getting close to the top of the hour here. So if anybody has any more questions, now's your last call to try to get that question in. I'm pinging over to Facebook to see if anybody put any questions in the comments there. Nope, nothing there. And there's no active questions now. I've ran out of questions. So Alex, I don't know if there's any closing thoughts or anything you're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys about this. Please let us know. And then also ways to either get a hold of you on Twitter or track down YubiKeys or.
Yeah. So I would say follow us on Twitter. It's just at YubiKeys. You could follow me if you want, but I'm not really on there talking about security much. You're better off following YubiKeys' Twitter handle. We have an awesome social media team. They're pushing out a ton of resources. For the developers on today, definitely join our developer mailing list because we are sending out updates all the time in terms of new resources available to you. We do a lot of educational webinars in terms of like how to actually do this stuff. We actually just put out 3 webinars in the month of June. It was a very exhausting month for me. On like how to actually implement FIDO authentication. So there's a 3-part series for that. There's like an introduction. The introduction is really good if you need to go and make a business case to like your product owner or something of like, we should really do this. So that'll help you there. There's also some content about like just in general understanding some architectural considerations when you're doing these things. The next one really gets into like how you're actually going to implement the code. And the last one, it's a bit longer. If you're going to go and implement your own validation server, that covers that portion, as well as if you're going to make something backward compatible with U2F if your application already supports U2F. So those are available, and I highly recommend everybody go and check those out.
And are those recorded?
They are, yep. So
okay, I'll try to get them linked in the bottom of the YouTube comments when we upload this to YouTube, so anybody watching after that can go access those.
Yeah, awesome. They're all available on Bright Talk as well. So if you go to Bright Talk and you look for YubiKeys, it's there. So sign up for our developer program mailing list to get early access to those things. We do a lot of alpha beta programs as well that you can join if you want to get early access to new hardware and some of our SDKs that aren't quite ready for prime time yet. Other than that, if you haven't already bought YubiKeys, I highly encourage you to go and do that on Amazon or on our web store. And yeah, if you've got any feedback or questions, you can definitely submit those to us on Twitter or go to our website and fill out a questionnaire for the developer program. And then we also are really active on GitHub, which is where you can go and submit questions and bugs and things like that.
Got it. And just really fast for those of you guys still attending live, put a little yes or no in the comments if you already use a YubiKey or a hardware-based type authentication. I know Blake does. Blake has a couple. He had to jump off for. He was attending earlier and he had to jump off. But I don't know if anybody else is using one or not. Who's left? Yes, somebody. There's a yes. If there's any more yeses. Nope, but will be soon. Interesting. All right, yeah. So I think this is accomplished kind of what I thought I wanted to do is like just really like that high level, like what is, because I think people have seen these and they know they exist. They've been in the news a lot this week, right? So it's just I think it's perfect timing to have you on and just kind of educate the audience about this a little bit. And I do thank you, Alex, for joining us. I thank all the rest of you for popping in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Alex. Bye-bye.
Happy Friday. Bye.